Hi, Dominique Sachse with you, and we are tackling makeup brushes this week. If you have ever been to a makeup store, you see the wall of brushes and you think, where do I start? Where do I stop? What do I need? How much do I pay? It can be daunting to figure it out. And in fact, it seems there are more and more different types of brushes on the market because there are more and more techniques to be able to use with the brushes. And I have to say that the right brush can really make or break how you apply a certain shadow, bronzer, sculpting. The right brush makes a big difference. But at the same point, you don't necessarily have to spend an arm and a leg for a good brush. I have purchased high-end brushes. I have purchased brushes at my local drugstore, and I find that what's more important is the type of brush as opposed to the brand of brush. So what I want to do is walk you through the different brushes that I use and explain what to look for and how it's used for a certain technique. So we're going to start with where we essentially start with our makeup, and that is our foundation. The foundation brush is really, really important. It has to meet certain criteria. First and foremost, the brush has to have a certain width to it because remember, we're covering the entire face. It also has to have a certain firmness about it because the foundation, whether a cream foundation or a stick foundation, you're going to need to blend and spread and push into the skin. So if the brush is too soft and too flimsy, it's going to not make the foundation adhere to the skin and make it very blotchy. So you want something firm, something that you can really whisk in there, blend, and that's going to be wide enough to cover enough real estate on your face. Also, the key, pull your foundation down your neck. Also, bring it onto your ears, especially if you wear a hairstyle behind your ear. But again, the key for this one is firm, wide, and packed enough to be able to hold on to that foundation and blend it. You know, cream and liquid foundations are much easier to blend than a stick foundation. So just be very wary of that and mindful as you search for a foundation brush. The next up is the brush that you're going to use to apply eyelid primer. And again, you don't want something too flimsy, but you also want something that's going to be wide enough to cover your eyelid area. So this particular one works really, really well for that. It's a relatively flat brush and it's almost the width of the eyelid, and it's something that you will utilize to take your eyelid primer and blend it from inner corner to out and up into the eyebrow area. But again, you want it to cover a decent amount of real estate here and to be able to spread and blend it well. After that, the next is, in my list, the brush that you use for your eyebrows. And I just was given this Eyebrow Reshaper by Lancome. A girlfriend of mine gave me this, and it is such an unusual eyebrow brush. It has this very fine point and then these sides, and it really enables, the way this brush has been cut, it really allows you to bring in hair-like strokes into the eyebrow, which is so great. Gives it more of a natural finish instead of a filled-in brow. You just press it into your powder and you can build it. And you can build it with strokes. You can define a little border on the bottom, but I'm really enjoying this brush. So it's the only one I'm going to name. The rest of them, again, it could be any brand, it really doesn't matter. But this thing has been very, very impressive. Okay, so now that you have your eyelid primer on and your brows are defined, the next thing is the brush that's going to apply the lightest color shadow in your palette. And I'm just going to bring out this Japanesque palette just to be able to use as an example. So here's the brush that I start with, and it's a wider brush. It's a soft brush. This is the one that's going to apply the lightest shade pretty much all over the eye. You can do an entire eye wash if you want, but what I do with that is I will utilize this off-white and I just kind of cover the whole eyelid, the crease, all the way up to the brow. It's just a wonderful, it's like putting powder over your foundation. Well, this is putting the lightest shade powder over your eyelid primer. And it will put the light where you want it and where you're going to leave it, which is on the inner corner and all the way up into the brow bone. And then you're going to layer and go deeper with the next series of colors. But it's just good to start with an even wash. So something like this of this width for the light shade is a great way to go. So next up now is the brush that's going to be utilized for the medium tone shade. And the medium shade is the one that's going to go right here on your eyelid, and you're going to press it up into the crease. So for instance, out of this palette, it could be this sand color, the khaki green, the kind of peachy color, or a little bit of a plum. Those are your lighter shades. So I would utilize a firm brush, not too wide, but it needs to be firm because you really want to get the pigment of the eyeshadow to sit really well on your eyelids. So you put it on the brush and you take and you press on the lid, and then you start to whisk as you go up into the crease. But you're really trying to deposit a lot of color here, so it may even take a couple of times, 2 or 3, to get the pigment to the right shade and then move it up into the crease. So now we're going to work on this outer part of the eye. And for that, you're going to want to go a little bit smaller in your brush, a little bit thinner. And this is the type of brush that you will now utilize for your darker shades. And this one is going to go on the outer third here and press up into the crease line. So that's why it's important that this brush not be too thick, because you want to define that and get in there and keep this a little bit more of a controlled and contained area, not so wide. So firm and thin is the way to go for that. Afterwards, this one, and this is, we're getting even smaller, you probably noticed, and again, still very firm and compact. And this can take your darker shade, and this one can run right against the upper part of the lash line and make that V. So that's kind of where you build that dark V to block out the eye makeup. After that, most importantly is to blend. So the blending brush is going to be your softest and really most flimsy. It's a very light brush. And the whole purpose of that is to now take these colors that you've set on your eye and to basically swirl and blend so that you've got no line of demarcation. You're just rubbing it all together. So the darker part's going to move up a little bit to the lighter part. Your dark corner is just going to pull out just a tiny bit, but that way there's no harsh separation between the colors that you've laid out. So the blending brush, I have to say, is one of the most important, and specifically utilizing that technique after you've applied your highlight powder, your medium tone shade, and your darker one to marry those colors together is key. So next up, a lot of you will choose to line with powders instead of pencils, because sometimes that can be a softer look, and you can definitely do that. So you could take, for instance, the darkest color in this kit and then utilize a very tiny firm brush in this dark powder, and you could run that right across your lashes. And you could build in a nice base with a shadow to give a bit of a smudge type look if you don't want to use a pencil. It's also good to have a little brush like this again, just for the outer corners as well, just to deepen a little bit. So I love to have one of these, whether I use a pencil or a shadow for lining my lashes. It's still a very good small blending brush for that lash line. And lastly, for brow highlight, sometimes I will take a very off-white cream highlighter and run it right underneath my eyebrow to define and enhance the eyebrow from the shadow. So that brush needs to be, again, very thin, firm, with a little bit of a point to it, and you would dip it into the cream highlighter. So let me show you this one as an example. So here's a highlighter, right? And you take just a tiny bit, and this is the one that you're going to run right underneath your eyebrow. And you want to take it and you want to blend it so there's no harsh line, but it really adds a lot of light right underneath the brow and gets that brow to pop even more so. So there we go. That takes care of the lid and up. Now let's start working on concealer. For that, you're going to want a little bit of a wider brush, again, flat and firm, because when you apply your concealer, whether it's a liquid or a cream, I usually take a few dots right here under the eye, and then I take my brush and I will press like so, and pat it in and pull it down to right about here, and then I'll bring it up underneath my eye and slowly whisk out to the side. And it's a great way to also define your eyeshadow and to create a nice little line here. And you just blend and you pull down. But the key again is a nice firm brush, not too wide. If you just look at the under eye socket, it pretty much matches the width of that socket. So that's about the size to look for. After you have now laid your concealer and you've got your foundation, you may want to utilize a loose powder on top. And you can use a powder puff, which will eliminate a brush, give you a heavier foundation, a heavier setting of powder. Or you could use a large brush to set that powder, and that'll give you a lighter, more of an airy finish. So again, this particular brush is going to be big because we're covering a lot of space. It's going to be soft and loose. So you would take that, dip it into your loose powder, shake off the excess, and then just lightly dust all over your face and your neck and down in your chest, just to make sure that your finish is the same all over. So now we are ready for contouring, highlighting, and blush. For that, the contour brush, the most important aspect of that is that it's flat. Contour brush needs to be flat and of a medium to a medium large size width. And that you're going to dip into your contour powder. So in this particular kit, it could be any one of these on the bottom or a combination of the three. And you hit that, and this is where you're going to cut in and you're going to carve some depth into your face. So it's a really flat brush, and you're going to push it in here under the cheekbone. This, remember the last video that I showed you where you do the number 3? Same thing. This is where you want your bronzer and your contour, starting up in your hairline, coming down under your cheek, and then down under your chin. So that's a really good way to start learning how to apply contour, like so. But this way you're going to get a lot of space, and the flat is really important because it presses that contour color in. So next up is a flat contour brush, and this is really good if you're contouring your nose. If you don't need to do that, then this would not be something you'd need to invest in, but it's flat, it's very firm and narrow. So you would utilize your contour color, you know, probably the medium one, the middle one here, and this is the one that you run right here along the side of your nose, like so. And a little bit the tip. If you do the tip, it shortens the nose. If you do contour along the side, it narrows the nose. But the key is blending, because you don't want to look like you've created 2 stripes down the sides of your nose. So, excuse me, after you've done that, take your powder brush and dust it with powder to soften that look. And last but not least is the highlighter. And the highlighter is a flat brush, and it looks like a fan. And you're going to go into your highlight colors, and this is the one that you run right underneath your eye, like so. And then right down the center of your forehead, nose, and the chin area. You can even do right up here above the lip, but that's where the highlight color goes. This fan brush really gets it in there very, very quickly. And last but not least, a blush brush. And that could really be, there are quite a few options here. I mean, I'm just pulling out 2 examples. One is a little bit more of a curved, one is a little bit flatter. This is where you can be most lenient for your blush brush. Not too wide, but not too small either. But again, the blush is really going to concentrate right here underneath your cheekbone. So you want the brush to be of the right width to get all of that, but not go up into the highlighter or down into the contour. So keep the blush brush on a medium to a medium small size. And again, you just kind of take it, press in your blush, and sweep it out to the side. Okay, really, last but not least is the lip brush. I almost forgot about that one, but one of the most important. And to me, the most important aspect of the lip brush is that it comes in a self-contained container. A retractable lip brush is key because that way you use it and then you close it and you can stick it in your makeup bag and not have to worry about the lipstick getting smeared on other products that you have inside your makeup bag. So there you go. Many lip brushes like this on the market. And I feel the next question that's coming, so I'm gonna nail it before you ask it. How often do you wash your brushes? Here's my rule of thumb. If I am completely changing color schemes, for instance, going from reds and rusts to plums and purples, then I will wash my brushes because I don't want those oranges mixing with the purple tones. If I'm staying in the same color family, well then I'll wash my brushes once a week. The key is to find a good brush soap, many on the market, but the reason why that is important is that regular hand soap can be very drying for these delicate, sensitive little bristles that need some conditioning. So brush soap will have some conditioners and some oils in there to really protect the bristles, not get them to fray and to look all nasty. So there you have it. Brush care, brush type, brush technique. We have covered the brush. Many stores will sell brush kits to take the guesswork out of it for you. Sometimes there's a foundation sculpting bronzing kit. There can be an eyeshadow kit. So that may be very helpful for you, is to buy it together, and oftentimes they'll discount the price if you buy in a kit. But I hope this gives you an overview as to what to look for and what goes where. I mean, there are a lot of brushes here, so it's complicated and it's a lot. But once you figure it out and you get your system down, you'll be amazed at how effective it is, how well it gets your makeup on your face. And the key to a beautifully made up face is a very well applied and blended face. And that's where the artistry comes in and the right brush and technique comes in. And also practice. It takes time. I've been a girl in my bathroom doing this stuff for many years. Some of you spent less time on makeup, some more. But as with anything in life, the more time you spend, the more you practice, the more you prioritize, the easier these things get. So this video happened because of you, based on my last video. So many of you asked about brushes. How do I know what to look for? So I really wanted to provide this content because it's something that you've all reached out to me about time and time again. So if it was helpful, please give me a 2 thumbs up, comment on what you would like to see next. I am here for you every Thursday at 1 o'clock. I release a new video, and lots of closet stuff starting to go on behind me. So that might be next week's video. Yes, I'm so excited. So many changes. Anyway, go out, be bold, be blessed, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.